Okay, and we are up on YouTube, so welcome folks who are just joining us there. We're going to get started in a few minutes here, so just welcoming folks for right now. Say hi in the chat room if you're already logged on or watching on YouTube. Say hi in the comments. If you're on Twitter, say hi with the hashtag. Let us know how you're doing. What organization are you with? What got you interested in joining us tonight? While we're doing that, let's do a go around introductions here, just of us. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Last Zoom of the day.
Same. Actually, I have one more Zoom, but it's a happy hour, so can't be mad at that.
I was thinking we usually have food and drinks for everybody. I was thinking we should have said, like, bring your own beverage to tonight's panel.
It's not too late, by the way.
That's true.
Okay.
If you're just joining us, it's not too late to go to the kitchen and get something.
Speaking of, I will be right back.
There we go.
I might pop out and get some pop out to the kitchen after intro slides.
And get a generous pour while you're at it. It's going to be quite a conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, we see more folks coming in. Lots of our regulars. Hi, Dan. If you're just joining us, please say hi in the chat room. Let us know where you're calling in from in your org and why you're interested in our talk today.
Hey, Howard.
Thanks for the intro, Catherine. Nice to meet you. One day we'll meet in person. It's like old friends reunion in the chat room. In case you're missing out, please go over there.
I was sort of thinking that for some of us who get to see each other at NTC, this is a nice little mini reunion.
Absolutely. In usual circumstances, this would be our NTC recap event.
Yeah.
But we asked all of you on Facebook to see what will be valuable with the age of COVID, and you all said the panel would be valuable. So here we are, and thank you for joining us.
We hope next year in April will be 21 NTC wrap up.
All right, so while we wait for let some more folks join us, I think we can get started with an introduction of our N10 local club, and Brianna can kick us off.
All right. Can you just let me know? I can't see the chat right now, but Anne, can you let me know if everybody can see the slides?
Please thumbs up in the chat if you can. Yes, people are seeing your screen,
All right.
Brianna.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We really wish we could be together in person, but we're excited to have you all with us for this virtual version of the 501 Tech NYC Tech Club. So welcome to Panel Perspectives, Coping with COVID-19. We are your NYC chapter organizers. My name is Brianna Collins. We've got Anne from Whole Whale. She is our moderator for this evening. Monitoring all of the technology is Chris Tuttle from Tuttle Co. And we've also got Joe Moran from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And we are very happy to be your NYC chapter co-organizers. 501 Tech NYC is the New York City chapter of NTEN, which is a national membership organization where nonprofit professionals learn about and celebrate the ways technology helps us meet our missions. And you can see down below, we have NTEN.org and hashtag 501 Tech NYC. So since you're all already connected, if you want to tweet at NTEN, use our hashtag, we can look out for conversations there. Thank you to our host, TuttleCo, which is Chris Tuttle's wonderful digital organization working with nonprofits. And Chris, I don't know if you want to give us a little intro to TuttleCo or not?
No, we're just a digital strategy agency working here in New York City. We'll talk about it later.
You can check out Tuttle.co and tweet at TuttleCo if you're interested in learning more. We also want to thank our in real life sponsors as well. Normally we have these meetings at Civic Hall. They are of course closed, but we miss them very much. And we want to thank Whole Whale, the group where Anne works, which is a digital strategy firm that specializes in working with nonprofits. They usually provide our snacks. We hope that you have your own snacks and drinks at home. But we just want to say thank you to them because even though we can't all be together, we miss them and we thank them for their ongoing support, even when we're not meeting in person. You can join us on Facebook. That's become a really active group, especially lately. People are chiming in with a lot of points for people, tips for people who are working remotely for the first time. Usually it's filled with conversations. As Anne mentioned, we had a poll in the Facebook group of what kind of content you want to see from us. And so I think we'll continue doing that as we go so that we can make sure that we're still providing you all with content that you want to see during these times. It's also a great place, people are posting job opportunities, RFPs. It's just a really great place for a discussion for our audience. You can also find us at the Nonprofit Tech Club online website with all the different tech club groups. So we're not the New York City chapter, but you can find a whole bunch of nonprofit tech clubs across the country. We know we can't travel right now, but hopefully one day we'll be allowed to travel again. And so you can check out a whole bunch of different tech clubs around the country there, bit.ly/501 Tech NYC. It's just occurring to me now that some of these other chapters might be doing online events too. So I would check out that URL and see if there are any other Zooms that you can log into from across the country. Updates from the Motherboard. These are updates from NTEN. As you all know, or a lot of you will know, obviously, unfortunately, they made the difficult decision to cancel 20 NTC, which is a real heartbreaker. However, there are community sessions available, meaning that these are sessions that people would have otherwise presented at NTC or have come up with in the aftermath of canceling NTC and the rise of COVID. And so you can look at that. They keep a running list that members can submit to of all the community sessions, and those are all virtual. You can also visit the virtual exhibit hall. So for those of you who haven't been to NTC before, normally there's a really big exhibit hall where you can sort of test out tech from different companies and you can talk to representatives from different companies. It's a lot of places that specialize in working with nonprofit organizations to meet all of your tech needs. Microsoft is a big sponsor, so if you didn't get the chance to go to any exhibit hall yet, obviously we couldn't do one in person, but check out the virtual exhibit hall. And I'll also make a shout out to donate to NTEN if you can. They set up a CauseVox campaign because NTC is a really, really big source of revenue for NTEN, which is a nonprofit organization itself. So if anybody feels in their that they want to give back to this organization that's given a lot to our community of professionals, please make a donation. Really appreciate it. Next month, stay tuned. We didn't want to plan for May too far in advance without knowing the circumstances, not knowing how this would go. So we will keep you posted, but and of course on all the channels that we mentioned, on Twitter and on our Facebook, and also on the bit.ly/501tech NYC, where all the tech clubs are. So please stay tuned. And if there's anything you would like to see from us in the next couple of months, please let us know on any of those channels. But tonight we're really excited to have with us a really great group of panelists, 4 panel perspectives coping with COVID-19. Your moderator is Anne, our lovely co-organizer. And we've also got Jasmine from the 92nd Street Y, Eliel Cruz from the New York City Anti-Violence Project, and Munir Panjwani, I'm sorry, from the Trevor Project. So let's get started.
Virtual clap. I know everybody's clapping. Thank you for the introduction, Brianna. And we will now focus and spotlight on our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you've got a million other things on your plate, and also deep gratitude to everyone who is joining us today in our virtual event. I know this is a difficult time, and it's hard to not connect with people. So thank you for being here in this moment together. As we sort out, there we go. Okay, and we are live streaming, and as we go along, I encourage you to ask your questions in the chat, and then at the very end, we'll make sure to have a Q&A where Brianna and I will read out questions to our panelists. What we'll do today is we will spend about 45 minutes with me asking questions to our panelists, and then we'll leave the rest of the time for your questions, because we want to make sure that this is as much therapy and help and inspirational as it can be. There's a lot of questions and we wish we knew the answer, but this is a black swan moment. So the best thing we can do is turn to each other for answers, and check with your doctor. Results may vary on these tactics. All right, without further ado, I want to turn it over to our panelists to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, your organization, and one thing that you are really enjoying watching, listening, or reading through this pandemic. So Jazz, let's start with you.
Awesome. Well, my name is Jasmine Cordu. I'm this digital content manager at 92nd Street Y. And what I've been doing or fixated on during this pandemic is renovating my room. So this past weekend, I redid the floors. I painted my entire bedroom. I bought a whole new bed set, put that together. So I'm like Bob the Builder. For the last few weeks, like full blown Susie homemaker, baking everything from scratch. So that's kind of how I'm coping now, which is pretty fun. I'm coming out of this with some new skills.
Wow, that's wonderful, Jazz. Please share before and after of your room.
Will do.
Eliel, let's turn it over to you.
Hi, my name is Eliel Cruz, Director of Communications at the New York City Anti-Violence Project. My pronouns are he and his. We're an organization that works to end violence against LGBTQ and HIV-affected survivors through free counseling, legal services, advocacy, and education. I've been watching a lot of things. I was gonna say I did similar things with my room. I bought new bed sheets that I can't get out of, and new towels that have been really luxurious. But I've been binge watching a bunch of Netflix shows. I just started last night, Never Have I Ever, which is such a cute, little romantic, almost all POC show. And also this is an all POC panel. I wanted to shout that out because I'm very rarely on an all POC panel. So I was like, okay, I'll do this. But yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Guess who's the majority now on this panel? Last but not least, Munir.
Awesome, thanks, Anne. It's great to be here. My name is Munir Panjwani. I'm the VP of Corporate Foundation and Government Partnerships. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I work with the Trevor Project. For those of you who don't know, the Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention organization for LGBTQ young people. I'm sure we'll talk more about the organization later on, but I've been going through phases of what I count as hobbies now, short-term hobbies. It went from redecorating my bedroom to buying a lot of stuff, returning a lot of stuff, to reading a bunch, and now onto watching 4 shows at the same time. So I started watching Broadchurch this weekend. I'm already on season 2, so you can see how fast I'm moving through those shows. But if you have not seen Broadchurch, I highly recommend it. It's very, very, very good.
Wow, lots of fodder for pop culture after today's panel. Before we go on into the meat of this, I want to take some temperature of the room. Just from 1 to 5, a very scientific scale, calm to chaos, 1 to 5, 3 being neutral. How are you feeling at this moment with regards to your work, and why? So on a count of 3, just put your hand up and give me a number. All right, is everybody ready? From 1 to 5, calm to chaos. 3, 2, 1, go. How are you feeling right now? Okay, we're closer to the chaos range. We're at a 4 out of 5. Jazz, why are you feeling this way?
You know, I think it's the combination of the uncertainty as well as of adding that to everyone's just trying to keep going. We haven't had a moment to kind of sit down and process and think about what next steps are. I think from our last day in the office to the first day working from home, we just kind of kept going and kind of throwing things to the wall, seeing what would stick. And me personally, I would have preferred a moment to kind of breathe and assess what next steps would be, as opposed to trying to just go straight into everything. So I think that is part of why things are more chaotic, because we're still trying to find our footing, still trying to figure out what's going to be the best model for us, because our main business model has been turned on its head. So it's been a bit messy.
Oh yes, we will get to that in a minute. LAL, why a 4?
I mean, I echoing all those things, not having time to really look into the future very much to plan and think too strategically. I'm thinking really 24, 48 hours in advance. Also feeling like I don't really have the space to do that, right? ABP works with clients day in and day out. And so responding to the needs of our clients who are currently in crisis, it leaves a little room for breathing room. But also I think what is unique about this for everyone is that we're not just, and for this organization, that we're not just now dealing with clients who are in crisis, like a lot of us are also in crisis and dealing with a lot of other things that are happening. And so how do we create space for that, for the fact that, especially for smaller teams, when one person needs space because of something that's COVID specific and related, how does that impact the work? How does that put work onto other people? I think it's just a lot more complex with, I think, staff having other things that they're bringing into the work right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And Munir, I'm sure you echo some of that as well. Anything you want to add to your 4 out of 5?
Yeah, I'll just say the difference for me between 4 and a 5 is 4 for me is the calm that comes with sometimes when you're in chaos, and 5 is just there's no calm, there's no control in the chaos. And I feel like we are as an organization really trying our best to find the calmness in various departments in the organization so we can continue to serve the people that are really reaching out at the highest levels ever in the history of the organization. And through that, we're finding that we can't slow down, and we can't necessarily reduce our services. We can't really pivot our programming in a way that's really essentially going to hurt the people that our mission is there to support. So the chaos is coming from the ambition of the team and the creativity of the team to really try and hustle and say, how do we sustain ourselves? How do we keep moving forward? And then what do we need to do to focus on right now in the short term, and what do we need to do in the long term? And right now I feel like I'm focused on the short term, which is I think what we just need to do. And that's where the chaos is coming from. We're so used to planning 12, 18, 24 months down the road. And now we're being forced to plan a month, maybe a week, maybe 2 months down the road.
Yep, I absolutely hear some themes here. And this is all to say, audience, that you're not alone in this. We're all trying to figure this out together. And we're going to hear a couple of tactics that these panelists are using in their organization as a way to figure out not what the answer is, but how they are approaching this unknown and how to get out of it, just planning ahead when we don't have any certainty. The 3 themes that we'll be talking about today are connectedness, continuity, and critical path. And I want to start first with connectedness. Our organizations exist to connect with people, to serve our communities, to support them and be there for them. But in this moment, we cannot physically be together, and that causes a lot of barriers. So not only are you having a higher volume of work, you're also doing that with one hand tied behind your back. Jazz, how's your org responding to this when in your mission with 92Y, you are here to connect people in real life, and you cannot do that now as a place-based organization. How are you connecting people in this moment?
So we've done a ton of online programming so far. We've been looking at different tools like Be Live and Zoom to transform some of our in-person programs, like our talks, or some of our senior programs, like we have a senior workout program that kind of gets seniors moving. We have some for the babies that come to our job. So we've been trying to find ways to make those digital assets that people can access. Another thing that we've been doing is we've started the 92Y at home email, which is basically a program. It's like programming in your email that we send out every day for Monday through Sunday. And we basically take content from our archive site, which we have a wealth of content from. From our YouTube, we have content from our centers. So we have a dance center, fitness center, we have art center. So we've been working with different programmers across the Y to find ways to turn some of this in-person work into something people can access online. We've even gone as far as kind of grassroots, trying to get in contact with our seniors. We've had people calling seniors just to check in on them, see how they're doing, see if they need anything. And we've also turned the building into, I know they did this for a little while at one point, into a place where people have been making PPE gear to donate into hospitals. So we've been trying to do the most that we can to still feel connected to our audience. We're on social more, so people are messaging us often, we're replying more often, trying to keep the content going. We're reaching out to some of our partners, that some of the talent that we've had in the past, to do more virtual events. So we're trying to do our best, the best that we can, to still give people that 92Y experience, but from the comfort of their own homes and the safety of their own homes.
Yep, and Brianna just noted that she also gets those emails, and I will say a bit of a nod here. I love the 92Y at Home series. It is something else you should check out while you're stuck at home.
Yeah, they're very sweet emails. Very nice content in there.
Very wonderfully curated. So thank you for doing that. And Munir, part of your job is to speak with funders and keep those relationships warm. How are you able to do that and maintain those relationships when you can't meet with your funders and your partners in the past few months? You are on mute. I know you're saying something brilliant right now.
I'm back. So we're a national organization with offices in New York, LA, and DC, right? But our funders are all over the place, especially corporate partners. They're all over the country. So we built already remote relationships with them because we have a very small team that doesn't see them often. However, the way we are connecting with them emotionally and as partners is by helping to solve their problems, which you may not, a lot of people might say, like, you're a nonprofit, why are you helping to solve a corporation's problems? But these are the corporations that have invested significantly in our growth, in the infrastructure that's allowed us to be where we are today. And to be good partners, it is a responsibility to figure out how do we support you so that you can continue to support us in the future. So a couple of examples I can give you is a lot of our biggest partners are consumer-facing retail partners, right? These are people who have stores or restaurants that people go to, which are all shut down right now. So once their revenue stopped, their teams got furloughed. And once their team got furloughed and their businesses closed, their marketing teams also basically completely disbanded. At the same time, they are doing some things to support the LGBTQ community in some ways, but they don't necessarily have a microphone to share that message as widely as they'd like to. So the problem we're solving with that for them is we created a digital virtual Pride campaign that's going to be launching in June, which we were going to do anyways. The only pivot that we made there was figuring out what is it, something that's turnkey, that's templatized, that we can give to our corporate partners, that they can just slap their logo on, get our approval, and then put it on their channels to show their support for the Trevor Project historically and especially now, right? So they don't need a lot of money to do that because we're doing it. They don't need a big team to do that because we're doing it. All they need to do is have access to their social media channels and their website. So that's just one example of how we are solving their problems, which is actually the feedback we're receiving is people are really thankful. It's not something that they were expected a nonprofit to go and say, we hear you, we're also here for you. We're partners in this together, and here are some ideas of how we can support you. And honestly, the feedback has been really, really inspiring. And for some of the partnerships, they've come back and said, thank you. I want to make sure that you are at the top of the list for us to support as we go into the later part of this year and also early next year, which is exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear. And that's such a prime example of how moments like this amplify the need for the work that you do. It's the problem's always been there, but now it's just so much more pointed and how a nonprofit can go in and solve it. So I see on my LinkedIn feed that you got a partnership with Sonoma, and in this time where it's so hard to forge those partnerships, and it's thanks to the work, the model that you've grown. So thank you for sharing that.
And can I just actually add one more thing? Because
yeah.
a lot of people have brought up the Sonoma thing. It's a great partnership. That was like any partnership that was 8 months in the making. It just happened to launch during this time. And like other partnerships where they've said, we don't know if we can launch anymore. Sonoma was one of the few ones that said, we want to launch, but help us craft the messaging so it's not tone deaf, so it feels comfortable for you to show up next to us, because we don't necessarily want to support a brand awareness message at this point. We want to support a mission awareness message. That's what we help them with. And that's actually what we're getting a lot of positive feedback. If they had said, buy our spatulas, people would be like, what are you doing right now? This is so tone deaf. But they're saying we're supporting the Trevor Project because their service is so needed right now, which is a very different message.
Yep, I love that. And then Eliel, going back to connectedness on this last question for this thread, April is Sexual Violence Awareness Month. And usually I know that you would be having different events and in-person connections. How are you able to do that and still have the same kind of connection and with your supporters in your community in this month, which you're on mute, Eliel. Once again, brilliance in silence. No, I still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, we can hear you. You're back.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what's happening. Could you repeat your question one more time? Sorry, the unmuting piece was that you're asking about a Sexual Violence Awareness Month specifically?
Yes, and how you're able to carry that out without being able to meet with your supporters in your communities.
Yeah, so our teams, in March and April, really tried to figure out how to shift the work digitally. We do a lot of trainings all the time, and we do some webinars throughout the year. But now all of that, all of our deliverables for our grants are turning into webinar pieces. So this month we have held a couple different webinars that are specific around Sexual Violence Awareness Month. We held them yesterday. Some of it also has just been repackaging some of previous content that we already had to re-push out, even though it's not new, but a lot of people don't remember it. Last year, we did a collaboration with Logo, where we created the hashtag QueerSFAM, Queer Sexual Violence Awareness Month, and queer narratives, or queer the narratives around sexual violence, because the more national narrative is very straight and cis. Repackaging those and sharing out old content for us has been helpful, and also repackaging stuff around intimate partner violence. So a lot of stuff is happening around Sexual Violence Awareness Month, but our biggest shift, I think, in our work, which maybe not directly to your question, has really been about how do we support individuals who are housing with individuals who have caused them harm, and knowing that it's limited, right? So we've been pushing out our hotline information as one of the only resources that people who are facing intimate partner violence has as a resource. But then repackaging that in different and creative ways. Additionally, we're shifting how we have promoted the idea of support around our hotline, because the hotline has been the only thing that we have historically pushed out more. But knowing that people can't make a phone call when they're being quarantined with someone who can potentially cause them harm, we've been also looking at ways to allow people to report online more. So it's been shifting with the needs of our clients.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. And if you have more questions, audience, on connectedness, please leave them in the chat. And I will say, anytime, every time I say, please mute yourself or unmute yourself, I'll take a sip, because why not? It's happy hour time. And you can do that too, audience and our panelist. I want to shift gears into continuity. As we're going through this New York on pause, everything else is still going on, including housing instability, a rise of that, more of increased rate in unfortunate things like intimate partner violence and hotline calls. And so I want to ask you all around resources and funding. How are you able, and what adjustments are you making internally, as much as you can share, to make sure the lights are still on, not only for this moment, but even after all of this blows over? Munir, I'll start with you. We've noticed that there are some certain foundations and funders who are already making changes to adapt to this new landscape. For example, foundations, some of them are now increasing payout rate and removing the obligation for report backs. Can you talk a little bit about what you've noticed in the landscape and what trends our peer nonprofits should be looking out for?
Yeah, so this is a complicated question because funding looks so different for so many different organizations. And so I'll speak from the benefit that Trevor has, which is Trevor has quite a diverse portfolio of revenue. So it's allowed us to balance out the decrease in revenue from corporate by really focusing on individual donations, as well as foundations, and as well as government, right? So the trends that we're seeing are actually 3 or 4 things, and I'll very quickly go through them. Number one is foundations that have supported organizations in the past are much more likely to support those organizations now. So I see and hear a lot of organizations that are going out to apply for a lot of different funding across the nonprofit ecosystem. That makes sense if you have a staff of like 10 to 15 people who are writing those applications. It does not make sense when you have a small team, which most nonprofits do. So really, I think the first ask is go to your current funders and just say, here's what's happening in my organization. Be super honest, be very transparent. This is the time to remove that like perfection facade and not say we're the best in the field, we're the only ones doing this work. Say we're trying to do our best. These are the challenges. Help us solve this challenge now. And they will say yes, because foundation's job right now is to give money and support their organizations and help them succeed. Second thing is, which I talked about earlier, which is finding problems to solve collaboratively. So like really having this honest conversations to say, what problems are you having and how can I help you there? Will positions you so well in ensuring that there's continuity to the partnership that you've invested in already. Third is when you're looking at individual donors, people are willing to give. I think a lot of people are afraid to drown the market even more with asks for donation. And that is a miss. Don't miss out on your donors who want to give. They want to hear from us. They want to know what we're doing. They want to know about the challenges. They want to know where their dollar is going to go, whether there's $5, $10, $100, a couple $1,000s. People actually want to know what's going on. So our entire development team has shifted, and now we're sort of over that phase. When it first started, when this crisis first started, we shifted our entire strategy to say, let's reach out to every single corporation, foundation, our major donors to ask them, what is going on with you? How can we support you? Here's what's happening with us. Will you support us? Right? That conversation was really, really important. That's allowed us to really think about what a strategy should be going forward. So we're not shooting fish in a barrel. So those are some of the highlights. And the last thing I'll leave you with is it's just to be really creative in terms of how you look at fundraising and partnerships, which is there are partners who came to us and said, we can't fulfill the obligations in the contract that we signed a few months ago. And there's no clause in the contract that allows them to back out because of a major crisis like this. If we wanted to be jerks about it, we could have been like, hey, no, you have to pay us the money. It's in there, it's on our revenue, you have to help us pay the bills. They don't have the money. So the creative solution we came up with was, let's pause the partnership for now, but let's extend the contract into next year so that we have a commitment for 2021, right? That keeps them on the hook with us, but also allows us to work to ensure that whatever we do next year is going to get bigger and better in a way that is sustainable for both parties, and also removes the burden from our side to have to negotiate that contract and partnership again. So be really, really creative in how you're thinking about how you can solve your partner's problems and your own problems.
Absolutely. So it sounds like the secret sauce is not so secret, is to reach out to your existing backyard and be helpful.
Yeah.
Is the thing, the secret here for Munir. Eliel, how have you shifted your internal resources to account for some of the things you mentioned earlier around supporting hotlines and supporting individuals and other priorities that have come up in the past few months?
We were shifting some of our resources that we would have used on events and promotions into a lot more graphic design, and I'm really pushing for illustrative work. So right now, I think a lot of people are not in a good headspace, and the things that we're talking about are really intense and can be hard to hear. So we are repackaging, like we created for example, a blog post around safety tips of what you're doing, what to do if you're being housed with someone who is causing you harm, where a safety plan is essentially a way to think about of how do you maneuver a potentially dangerous or harmful situation. And I've been taking those and repackaging them and using those exact same tools and tips for social media to push out. Or I should say I'm in the process of doing that. I actually had COVID in March, so a lot of my work has slowed down. I was at like a 30% workload, and so I'm still kind of like getting up to speed since our communications team is also just a team of 2. but repackaging in different ways that we feel like will be more engaging. It's saying the same thing, but really affirming the same messaging again and again and again, and using visuals that we think will be more engaging for our clients. As well as in terms of like the funding piece as well, I'm not privy to it directly since our development director is leading that, but we have done a couple cool things which I have been a part of. We've done some smaller funder briefings, around 15, 20 people on Zoom calls, really outlining the ways that we're specifically responding to COVID in this moment, and supporting our clients who are facing IPV situations, as well as our undocumented LGBTQ asylum seeking clients and unique situations that they're facing. And currently ABP is in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign. So we're asking all of our donors and supporters to use Facebook as a way to crowdfund in their networks right now. In these like $5, $10, $50 donations all really add up. So there's been two different ways that we've also tried to continue to get more resources during this time.
It's very helpful to hear. And we are so grateful that you're here with us and are healthy, hopefully once again. Thank you for being here. And then Jazz, how has your communications, your social media strategy shifted to account for a lot of the revenue that has been lost that would have been taking place from the events and the tickets?
Yeah, it's a challenge because we've been trying to keep up our social media drumbeat. So we're still posting at least once a day because, again, we're trying to create new content, but we're still trying to find our footing with that. So we're repurposing a lot of our old content. We're not running as many ads anymore. We do still have an ad agency that we're working with, but and we're giving them things as they come, but we've kind of scaled back on that just to be mindful of the money going out of the door. We're trying to start monetizing some of the talks that we've done so far, and these are pretty inexpensive. We're charging $5 to like $10 for a talk. We've also tapped some of our colleagues for classes. So we have an art class series that we've been monetizing. We've also done screenwriting classes with some of our people in the art department that are really well versed in screenwriting. So we're trying to find ways to monetize what we've already done in a digital fashion. But the challenge is that we understand with the economic state of the city, millions of people have lost their jobs. People are really trying to spend their money thoughtfully, and we find that it's now a bit more difficult to try to sell even a $10 talk. You know, people are prioritizing differently. So we're trying to find ways to spice up the things that we're doing to make them a bit more worth paying for, really. We're trying to really find ways to get in touch with our talent to see if we can create these special online experiences that you just can't get anywhere else, that you wouldn't mind paying $15 to attend. So we've been trying our best to find ways to keep our business model together in the best ways we know how, but we're seeing that it's quite difficult.
Yep, and I happen to know that as we're speaking, General Petraeus is about to teach a class on leadership, I think, with you all.
A ton of live streams happening.
It's clear that I'm a big fan of all of your orgs and the content of 92Y. Great. So again, please, if you have more questions, put them in the chat and we will go through them at the end. I want to shift gears now that we've talked about connectedness and continuity into the critical path. Our work is far from done. And as you're trying to navigate the current situation, we're also proactively planning ahead as much as we can for what recovery could look like. So Munir, I know that you've talked a bit about your partnerships and how you're able to push the revenue ahead into the next year to build some stability. What are some of the strategies that you're now implementing as part of this pandemic to make sure that the organization can support your communities through this and the future?
Are you specifically asking about from a fundraising lens?
Yeah, from a fundraising lens.
Yeah, so the number one strategy is not to commit to a strategy, which I think is true for everybody. The world is changing week by week, and we're hearing such mixed news about what will open. So being extremely flexible with what we will commit to in the long term is something that we're thinking very, very seriously about. What that includes for us is, as we're looking at corporate partnerships, which was the fastest growing revenue stream for us, we know that will no longer be the fastest growing revenue stream. So if that is no longer the biggest revenue driver for us, we're looking at foundations and government, because that may be where most of the money is. We're looking at hiring a director level person in that role, and that role was vacant until now. Individual giving, for example, we were one of the lucky organizations that gets significant amount of funding, sort of passive revenue from Facebook birthdays and anniversaries that people just donate to support the Trevor Project. I think we're in the top 3 or 5 of organizations in the country that receive the most money from Facebook every year. So we haven't really had a really strong strategy around that. And during this time, when the larger dollars go away, the smaller dollars make a huge difference. So for us to activate the small level donors is really, really important. So we have a digital engagement manager that's going to really focus on peer-to-peer fundraising on digital platforms going forward. That's something that's that requires less resources, but is really, really high impact in what it can deliver because of who we are as an organization. People trust us, people know us. We've been around for 22 years. We're the only organization that's doing this work for the LGBT community. So we have a great sweet spot with LGBTQ people and allies who want to support us, and we just need to turn that on. Right. And that's not to say that, if in 6 months or a year, the economy ramps back up, we'll still have a team and a business model ready to turn on our corporate partnerships and still be able to take advantage of the cause marketing initiatives and employee engagement initiatives that we've launched. It may just not be as big.
Gotcha. So it sounds like a scale from individual to corporation. You're just moving the lever a bit to adjust for the moment. Yep, and you can scale it back up when things return to normal, hopefully soon, but none of us know when that might be. And as we plan ahead for the future, Eliel, having gone through, having had to deal with COVID yourself, how has that changed some of your thinking or strategy around going through this moment and then supporting your communities, making sure that your mission is still at the core of everything you do for the next few months and all the way through the year?
I think having gone through COVID myself, and I worked through it predominantly because we had a small communications team, me and my own staffer, and a lot of things we shifted and we needed to show up for our clients. So I luckily had a mild case, but even the mild case was kind of difficult. I think it's about, for me, at least on a personal level, has been thinking about how do I make sure that I do all that I can to take care of myself while doing this work in ways that I probably neglected before even this pandemic, but I really need to prioritize during this, especially as we don't know how the health of like our loved ones and communities are going to be impacted over the next few months and over the next year. So just thinking about really prioritizing that in ways that I haven't. And then I think my guiding principles, because I've only really been at 100%, at least health-wise, the last 2-3 weeks, my guiding principles and so far have been just to respond, to adapt in crisis and not respond in crisis. AVP is a crisis organization, so we know crisis well. I think it's a little bit, unique in that, again, we're all of us are also dealing with crisis while also trying to do work, and then also working with clients who are facing compounded issues because of the crisis, but trying to remember that we need to adapt and be flexible and amendable during this crisis and not respond in that has been helpful. And then also just trying to create space for generative and creative ideas and reimagining. I haven't been in a generative thinking space, and I've been honest with that in some of my meetings, of just being like, I don't know what we're going to do in the place of this when we usually do this in person. Thinking, for example, like our organizing work, and thinking of, when there's been homicides in the city, we have mobilized people in person to commemorate those we've lost. That's happened during this pandemic. I did not think that we were going to lose an LGBTQ person that quickly in a pandemic, let alone New York City. But there was a trans woman who was murdered, like within a week when the shelter in place started. And we normally would have rallied a bunch of people to honor her name, and we weren't able to do that. So thinking of the things that we normally are really proud of the work that we do, and it's important pieces of the work that we do, creating space and time for staff to be creative and generative of new ideas of what this looks like in really kind of a digital space. for the foreseeable future. So those have been kind of my guiding principles as I've gotten back into work at 100% and thinking of how the work is shifting.
Thank you for sharing. And we'll get back to that in a bit around self-care and taking care of your team before you can support your community to the fullest. And Jazz, before we move on to the next portion of our cool down, I want to ask you, how is your organization, 92Y, thinking about reopening and resuming your services, given that you are a place-based organization? And so the plans that has to be put in place has to be so meticulous and thoughtful. How are you approaching that?
In all honesty, we still don't know. It's a challenge because, majority of the money that we make at the institution is based on large groups of people gathering. We have a 900-seat hall, we have a 200-seat hall, we have a very popular camps program that relies on kids being able to spend time together. So we don't know what that's going to look like in the coming months. What we do know is that we're not going to be able to fill those spaces anytime soon. So we're still trying to figure out how we can support our communities in a safe manner. Our executive leadership team have been working day and night, weekday through weekend, trying to figure out, what we're going to do this week, let alone what we're going to do in a couple of months. So I'm hopeful that we can sustain ourselves long enough to see the doors open again and to start to welcome in people in small batches. We're just trying to figure out what that's actually going to look like. So we're hopeful, but we don't have any concrete answers.
Completely understand. We'd be fooling ourselves if we said that we had clear answers in these moments. And what we can do is try to be directionally right. We don't have answers. So I appreciate the candor. And I hopefully that sounds comforting to folks calling in as well, because some of us, there are some questions that we're just trying to figure out as we go forward hour by hour. Great. So let's wrap up very quickly. I've got only a few more questions left. Eliel, you mentioned that taking care of yourself and taking care of your team is so critical for us to be there for the people who need us. And also we need to recognize that the people who work with us and ourselves included, are not immune to the impact of COVID. So what are some of the things that you have found to be helpful for yourself and your team in terms of morale as we go through this?
Quite a few things, I think. So one of the things we did on the management team level is offer staff 2 extra weeks of sick time for COVID specific related reasons, and it's very flexible. It is not just if you are sick, it is if your roommate's sick, if a loved one is sick. It's very flexible to use, and an extra 5 days of sustainability days of just time time to take off, knowing that this time is going to be difficult, that this work is difficult, and we want to make sure that staff didn't just hear that we're like, take time, but we're like, no, take time. Here's some extra time for to actually do that. In terms of staff morale, a lot of things that departments have been doing is doing daily check-ins via Zoom, making sure that we do a lot of screen time, people are missing that connectedness. But then also not just work-related stuff. Sometimes it's been like, we're just like with my employer or when we're one staffer, it's literally just us on Zoom, but like working, but like next to each other, like not even necessarily talking, but just like having that face and being able to like quickly, if you want to quickly say something, connecting to them is helpful, since some of us, are quarantining alone, and that lack of interaction is can be difficult. Yeah, and for myself, I've just like, things similar to Jasmine. I like literally made my living space in my living quarters everything that I kind of neglected it to. Like, I was like, no, I'd rather just go to dinner or get drinks with friends. It's like, no, I'm now spending that money to make sure that like the space that I'm occupying for the foreseeable future is like really just like how I want it to be, and really produces a better space for my mental health. And then also being honest with my teams when I'm like, I'm not in a generous space to be really thinking of, I'm not in a good space to try to be creative right now. And like extending myself grace and being kind to myself, because that can be hard on myself and wanting to have all the answers and right answers, with how much the organization relies on our comms team, but just being honest and giving us some grace and space too.
Absolutely. Munir, how are you taking care of yourself and your team?
A lot of patience and a lot of empathy. Where a crisis intervention organization. We are a team of feelers and empathizers. We share a lot of emotions with each other, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing for me to be part of. So in many ways, when that happens, I have to role model that emotion as well, right? I have to role model the emotions that are okay in a work environment in this time. So one of the first things that our organization did was we gave everybody an extra personal day to take off whenever they want to. On top of that, gave everybody 2 weeks off if they get sick with the flu, a cold, COVID, whatever it is. You just take it, no questions asked, just go take care of yourself and come back. So as soon as that happened, the following week, I was feeling myself very burnt out. I was like, I'm just going to take that day off. I had pretty much meetings from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I said, I'm canceling all of those. We're going to push them. I need to role model behavior of self-care. So my team will do it as well. And once I did that, other people felt comfortable to ask me then the following weeks, can I also take the day off? I was like, yes, please take the day off. And as we are getting deeper and deeper into the crisis, it's been really helpful. You know, part of my challenge always is like, how do you balance the workload with the heart load, right? The heart load, which is how do you take care of people's hearts in this time? And it's been helpful to allow other people to come to me and say, I can't do this right now, and just saying it's okay. I have a team of ambitious people who are just hard drivers and they just want to hit their goals. And we're fundraisers, which means numerical goals are really important to us. That's what motivates us. So being able to remove that pressure from them a little bit to say, we will raise the money. We're actually very lucky as an organization compared to other organizations. Please don't worry about having to raise money because we're not in a place where somebody will have to get fired. Right. And if we were in that place, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. But let's just thank ourselves for the hard work we did over the last 2 years to get to where we are today, so we can take a sigh of relief and a breath to catch ourselves and then allow us to continue to grow and move forward in a way that's self-sustained. Something else we're doing often is when this crisis started, we started every meeting with a very quick mental health check, just going around the circle and just asking people, how are you doing? Share your feelings, right? Whatever you want to share. If you don't want to share, you can pass it around. That got really exhausting because, you know, if you are in meetings all day long, you're repeating yourself, share the same exact emotion with 50 people. Half of them have heard that before. So we evolved that into, you know, what's one word that you can share about your feeling as opposed to an entire story. Then that evolved into other icebreakers like, what's your morning routine? To, you know, if your weekend could be summed up into a vegetable, what vegetable would it be? Like really cool, fun, weird things like that, that allows people to not just talk about the heaviness of the situation, but talks about the levity of what's happening around us. Because all of us are doing weird things at home, right? We're stuck 24/7. What are those weird things? Let's talk about that. Let's be weird together. So those funny things, serious things has helped our team be balanced in this time. And the last thing I'll say is, as a leader and as somebody who has also had like a personal loss because of this, it's been very, very important to show our team that it's okay if you are struggling a lot more than others. You don't have to name it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to acknowledge it in a way that, you know, you feel like you have to share about the deepest feelings to other people. Just let me know as your manager, and then you have your time. So I have a lot of people on my team and across the organization whose families, whose relatives, whose friends, whose neighbors are getting really sick. People are thinking about the funerals that they can't go to. People are going to Zoom wakes and services on the weekend. These are realities that we never faced before. And as a manager, it's hard to know what to do in that situation, except just to empathize and really do your best to work and manage up and tell our leaders, listen, what you're expecting from this team is just not going to happen right now, right? We got to change some shit. And that's been really helpful. So the way I can support my team is to manage up so that I'm not putting the pressure that's on me onto my team.
I'm taking some notes there, and I feel like a lettuce right now. I like that question. I'm going to steal it from my team. Jazz, same question to you. How are you taking care of yourself and your team?
Well, for the team, we have morning meetings every morning. We found that phone calls are a little better than Zoom, just because some people are just not comfortable with being on camera 24/7. So we've just stuck to phone calls when we can. We've also just been really honest with one another. Like if we just don't have the capacity to get things done, we're allowing each other to be a bit more lax in terms of how fast we're getting things done, how efficient we are. We've even kind of we've relaxed in the reins of how our content looks. Normally we have highly stylized content. The video team that I'm on does a great job of kind of making our videos and our content look incredible, but we've scaled back because we have a lot of things that we need to work on, and we understand that there's only so much time in the day. We know people are home, but for me personally, and this kind of goes into how I self-care, I try to respect boundaries and I try to set my own boundaries. I think the lines between home and work have been blurred so much so. And I'm also seeing that we've all kind of responded to working during this pandemic differently. Some people are pouring themselves all the way into work. Some people, and myself included, are kind of pulling away from work and trying to really settle in from home. So for me personally, it's been really helpful to set boundaries. So I work 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and after 6 p.m. I am with family. I do not work weekends, so I don't answer emails and phone calls on weekends. I think that me being home, my mom is an essential worker, so my focus is making sure that she comes home healthy and is not sick. My dad's a diabetic, so we have to make sure that he doesn't get sick. So, I have a lot of things that I'm thinking about that are not work related on a daily basis. So for me, it's helpful to kind of take moments and take them back to myself and not feel bad about it. In normal circumstances, I think I've worked at the Y for over a year. I think they understand that I have a very strong work ethic, but I think we also understand now that the climate has changed completely. The way in which we operate in this world has changed completely, and we're going to see more changes. So we're trying to be more flexible and more understanding, and making sure that people aren't feeling too pressured to overexert themselves in light of everything that's already happening.
Yep, so important to set boundaries. I think Munir agrees and echoes that as well. Thank you all so much for sharing, and I want to turn over to the audience questions. If you have more, please add them in the chat or the Q&A and we'll go through them. Speaking of our Zoom fatigue, Joshua Pesquet has a question for you all. And please just unmute yourself and answer if you would like to jump in. If we accept that Zoom fatigue is becoming an issue, are any of you discovering ways to engage outside of video conferences, webinars, etc.?
So we're not doing a lot of webinars or econ or virtual conferences, but there's a lot of meetings, and meetings are creating that fatigue. So I'm just starting to do this after I read a bunch of articles about how and why Zoom fatigue is happening. It's because we're always on when we're on camera. We just can't relax. And that's emotionally and mentally exhausting for us to always be on and not be able to just be comfortable with ourselves. So we're starting to make meetings video optional, which is really helpful. Kind of going back to the old ways of, like, if you're just talking to somebody on the phone, that's a little bit better, because then I can be like making my lunch, to doing my bed, to just doing something I need to be doing while also talking to this person, not feeling like I have to sit here for 9 hours to do this. And that's actually been really helpful. Second thing that's been really helpful is taking walking meetings. So if it's a one-on-one with somebody and you just need to walk around the block because you've been sitting on your bed or your couch or your desk for 5 hours, just asking the other person, hey, do you want to go on a walk with me? And if you're not in a very crowded place, that's a wonderful activity to do together, especially if you don't need to be in the front of a computer. It's very, very easy to do, and I found it to be really beneficial.
Elion, Jasmine, do you want to jump in on that as well?
Sure. So we, again, as I mentioned, we try to do more phone calls and Zoom meetings to kind of avoid the fatigue. And also, I am in a different position because my role isn't really, I don't have to interact with too many people on a daily basis, so I'm not in a ton of meetings. But what I've noticed is that I think we've done a good job of trying to discern when a meeting is necessary versus when it could be an email. So if it's just, if we're just kind of like trying to hash out, let's say when a video is going to go live, or if we're cross-posting from a different organization, those types of things can be email chains because we don't really need an immediate answer on that. But if it's more of like a strategy meeting where we're going to be kind of having a meeting of the minds and brainstorming, we reserve those for Zoom calls and phone calls. So just trying to be mindful of when a meeting is necessary versus when things can just stay on email or Slack.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add from that, but we have also made things optional in terms of phone or video. Yeah, I can't think of much more. The webinar piece is, or the educational piece, external piece, has been interesting. We have been asking folks to share their curriculum far more in advance so that we're able to find ways to repackage it for social and digital, so that if folks don't want to go to the webinar or aren't able to, there's still other ways that they can engage that content. But internally, haven't found much else.
Another question from the audience, from Dan Shoot-Smith. What do you think has made your organization better from these challenging times? Dan, always come in with the hard questions.
I'm happy to go first. So the way we're built for remote work for the most part. We have our crisis services over phone, text, and chat. Text and chat has volunteers that can work from anywhere in the country as long as they have a computer and internet. For our phone line, which is a lifeline, we've always had a call center in our office in LA and New York. Like that was a physical office call center, partly because we felt like voice calls require a level of privacy that is really, really important to maintain. Secondly, because we didn't necessarily have the technology and the resources at the time to really go fully remote and be able to apply the same strategies and best practices that we have on the digital side to a phone service. However, as COVID was approaching, because of a lot of like technological changes we made in the last two years, it was in our strategic plan to take our phone line call centers and turn them into complete remote centers over the next 9 months. That was possibly going to be also pushed out further than that, because if you don't need to change something immediately, why would you change it? And we thankfully were able to do that in about 2.5 weeks. So we took our entire call center from LA and New York and turned it completely remote, and did it in a way that did not reduce our service hours, did not interrupt our service in any way, and actually maintain the same quality of service that we've been providing since ever. So that's a really testament to our team, which is going to serve us so much as we get out of this crisis, because one of the biggest limitations in getting volunteers for the phone line was that people had to be based in New York and LA. Now that we have a system that's proven that you can be anywhere and be able to volunteer from anywhere for all of our crisis services, we can really open that opportunity up for so many more people who would much rather have a conversation over the phone than over text in a chat. So I think that's the biggest benefit of our organization, that our organization is having as a result of this crisis.
Yes, and before I let Eliel and Jasmine jump in, I just want to note that it is 7 o'clock. If anyone has to go clap for our essential workers, please feel free to do so. And I'm doing that right here with you all.
It's happening outside my window right now.
Everywhere. And this is what I love about seeing in this moment, we're coming together and being our best selves. So thank you to our frontline workers and everyone, essential workers in your network. Jazz, I want to throw it over to you. What's same question as Munir from before?
What was that question again? I'm so sorry.
What are some of the things that you're doing that's working in these challenging times?
So we've been scouring the internet for new tools, so to kind of use outside of Zoom, because as I mentioned, we've been working with talent to do these virtual talks, these virtual events. So we've been using Be Live just to be able to record content ahead of time, to be able to repurpose for social afterwards. We've also been just trying to find ways, like 92Y at Home, for example, is one of the ways that we've been trying to find ways to repurpose some of that content and also kind of reintroduce that content to our audience. But that's pretty much what we've been doing. One of the things that we've found that kind of made our organization better in the last couple of months is I think we found a new appreciation for one another. We had a Zoom kind of happy hour with the team, and we kind of realized that all of our work is so important to the work that each other is doing. So we're just finding new appreciation for one another and finding ways to help and uplift one another. So trying to make sure our workloads aren't too heavy and trying to be really mindful about how we're doing these things.
I think for AVP, 2 ways. I mean, the first way is just like our staff are really dedicated to our clients and the work that we do. And I think that this crisis has really shown that in how staffers are going above and beyond to really find new and creative ways to meet the needs of our clients. Thinking out of the box and really just finding ways to respond in this moment has been really incredible. From a comms perspective, I think it's even post this pandemic, it's going to be we're going to be better in that a lot of departments and some staffers who may not think about their work in a digital sense are going to be thinking about their work in a digital sense now. So they're really thinking about ways to implement the things that they didn't really think that they needed to share externally or promote in any kind of digital fashion. They're building that into their work plan now, and they're learning a lot more about digital communications in a way that may not have happened if this didn't happen, but now is being required. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to really focus on and build into everyone's work plans in the future.
Great. We have a couple of related questions, and one from Magda is, with the frame that we hope that we are out of COVID and the restrictions loosen and hopefully get back to normal, will you keep the online component, and how will you market that to your supporters?
I'll take this one. I personally believe that we'll have to. I think that, we're not going to be able to, again, fill our 900-seat hall anytime soon. So we're still going to need to provide content for those who we can't have in the building, people who might be immunocompromised, our senior population, our children, our kid population. So we're definitely going to continue to do some more online content, at least I think so. And in terms of marketing, we've been using our social media marketing, we've been using digital, we've been using email marketing, we've been using display ads, just trying to find various touch points to still connect with our audience. So we'll probably just double down on that the more that we can.
Elia and Munir, anything you want to add there?
I'll let this one go.
No, I think short answer is yes. I think it's just going to be an additional part of our work. I also don't think that we're going to be in a space anytime soon that we're going to be anywhere near back to normal. But whenever we get there, I think that this will just be something that we continue to hold into the work.
All right, well, we've got one last question here. So audience, while we take this final one, please add any remaining questions, burning questions you have in the chat. In the meantime, panelists, how are you balancing COVID versus non-COVID content that you are pushing out? Or are you not pushing out any non-COVID content? We've had a few situations where things that were in the pipeline have materialized and suddenly don't feel relevant anymore.
Yeah, being I manage all of my social media, so I've run into this problem very early on. I remember the first day out of the office, we just happened to have a post that related to finance and spending money, and this was when people were finding out that they didn't have a job, and we quickly got that feedback saying how tone deaf that was. And again, like this, we had just left the office the next day that post went live, so we kind of got our footing with that pretty quickly. We've been trying to balance COVID content, maybe 1 or 2 posts a week that just want to check in with our audience. So we'll post questions that ask people like what they've been reading or what they've been watching, how they've been staying active, how they've been connecting with loved ones while social distancing. We've also been trying to find relevant moments in our existing content that can relate. So we've done in the past some meditation events. So I've been pulling clips from past meditation events and kind of formatting it in such a way that will encourage folks to take a breath during the day. I've tapped our HR team to create a work from home tip packet on our social, just for those newly working from home who might not have ever experienced it and are kind of weird about how to navigate that. So we've been trying to find balance, because we find that if we just kind of stick to business as usual content, it can come off very tone deaf very quickly. And people don't want they don't want to be entertained all the time, especially when they're thinking about some heavy things. We want to let them know that while we're still here to entertain you and give you some fun, uplifting content. We still want you to know that we're here with you. We're going through the same thing that you're going through, and we want to connect with you and see what's going on, find ways that we can help. So we've been doing 50-50, but if you want to kind of give it numbers, like 1 to twice a week, we'll do some COVID-related content and then other content outside of that.
Gotcha. Munir and Eliel, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so our content is, when you look at our social, it's very supportive of young people, right? It's already very crisis centered. It's like, what do you do in a crisis situation? I'm sure, Elia, yours is very similar to that. It's just making sure people know that our service is still here for them, that if they're struggling with any sort of depression, anxiety, loneliness, abuse, suicidal thoughts, that they can come to us. The thing that's changed is we're starting to look at messaging as a continuous narrative over the next 3 months. Right. Summer is our busiest month because of Pride. Pride usually results in a lot more people contacting us. but it's also when we have some of our biggest fundraising moments. So there's a lot of content that we create during Pride that goes out, which we're still going to do. The content is still happening. What's changing is that COVID is being weaved into the reasoning for us running that content. So an example is our April campaign is specifically around how is the Trevor Project showing up for LGBTQ youth in this time as a response to COVID. So we're talking about the fact that we have a lot of insights and learnings about the challenges specifically LGBTQ that are facing right now, like loneliness, like a decrease in positive social interactions because they're not in school anymore, and an increase in negative social interactions like being at home, which may not be accepting or comfortable or safe for them, or in a home where they're not out yet, or in a home where they came out and some people accept them, some people don't accept them. So really addressing that and saying we are available for all young people 24/7 in this time of need. Now in May, that content changes from talking about COVID to talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, which is what May is. We were going to do that campaign anyways, and we're going to run a lot of content around that anyways. Now we're positioning that from the lens of COVID. So if you're struggling with mental health issues right now, here's what you can do to support yourself and support people around you. And there's, of course, there's some language specifically around COVID. Move that into June. June is Pride Month. So the only thing that's changing is not the content, but really the tone of that content. So in the past, it was really around celebration. It's really around parties, right? It's really about like being out and loud and proud exactly as who we are. Now we're taking a very different definition of pride and saying you can celebrate in your own way at home. Define that for yourself. Pride doesn't go anywhere. Pride is not just a parade. Pride is where you are. So that's the content, and really allowing people to reframe that pride doesn't have to happen on the street, but it can actually happen in your home or happen online or happen anywhere that you feel proud to be who you are. So the content, the narrative arc of our content is changing because of COVID, but our content is not changing.
Well, I'll be following that campaign. Elia, do you want to add on to those answers?
Yeah, I think we're very similar to Trevor Project. The stuff that we push out as is typically very around needing support around infant violence. The majority of our calls typically are around, at any given month, obviously it fluctuates, is around hate violence. And seeing that intimate partner violence is now something that is going to be increasing and has been increasing, our narratives have shifted to really name that and focus on that. So really just kind of taking the stuff that we've already been sharing around if you need support, if you're experiencing harassment, if you're experiencing violence, call us, contact us, but naming in this moment during COVID, while you're sheltering in place, while you're potentially in a space with someone who's causing you harm, we are still here for you, and really highlighting the services that are ongoing that are supportive during this moment, but also the new and specific ways that we're responding to COVID in this moment for our clients.
All right, so we've got one final question from our audience that I'll turn into a rapid fire, because why not? That's a way to end our panel. All right, you ready? So we'll go around and you can give us 1 to 3 tools in response to this question. Again, from Dan, what digital tools have you had success with operating remotely? Let's start with you, Jazz.
We've only really been using, like I mentioned, Be Live, which is another Zoom kind of platform that allows you to kind of record content or live stream content. You can feed it into Facebook, you can feed it into YouTube. So if you're going to do a bunch of live streams or webinars, it's great for that. Or if you want to do pre-recorded content, you can do that as well. But we've mostly been using Zoom and Be Live just to kind of help with our events. But that's all we've kind of really been using.
Great, Munir.
Obviously Google Hangouts, we're built on Google and they're one of our partners. So everything that Google has to offer, we use all of it right now. Second thing I'm loving is Boomerang. Most of you know what it is, but it's an email tool. The thing that's really good about it is that I can work at odd hours, and a lot of people are working at odd hours, but the emails can be scheduled for later. So that my team doesn't get stressed out for getting an email at 4 in the morning. Just because I'm up, they don't have to be up or get stressed out. So it's been great to schedule those emails to go out later, and also learn if they're actually opening those emails, which is sometimes really helpful to know if your team actually listens to you. And then the last thing that's actually really helpful is, what is that, House Party? What is that app? I'm forgetting.
House Party.
House Party, yeah.
House Party. I think we're using Zoom. Yeah, I mean, Zoom is the main tool that we're using more of. I'm trying to remember the name of this tool. It's like an online whiteboard that's been helpful to use during, and of course I forget it, while we're doing some strategy planning. I will tweet it out with the hashtag if I remember it. And then we've been using Google Sheets in usually, when we want to share a resource guide with clients or community, we want to put it on a website to bring people back to us. But with the resources that are happening in the city, things are moving really quickly, and a lot of people need to be changing as the resources are updated. So we've just been throwing out Google Sheets that is a resource guide around what do you need, what can you get right now in the city, so that the 10 different people and our staff that are monitoring all the different changing needs of COVID are able to update it without having to go through a very tedious process, which is kind of a more quick and dirty way of getting it out there, but just responding to the need.
Gotcha. Offline, Munir, we need to talk about why you're up at 4 a.m. working, but that's for another panel. All right, well, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. I think that covers everything we have. Now, lastly, before we go, I want to ask everyone, how do we get in touch with you and how can we help you? Starting with you, Jazz.
Oh, cool. Well, if you ever have any questions about social or digital or anything like that, you can email me at jcordu@92y.org. I'm also on Instagram. You can follow 92Y, 92nd Street Y is our Instagram handle. We're also the same on Twitter. And you can message us if you ever have any questions about events or just any general questions about how we're doing.
Munir?
You can reach me at munir.panjwani@thetrevorproject.org. So that's my first name, last name at thetrevorproject.org. Ask any questions that you have. I'll try and answer as fast as I can. And what was the other question?
How can we help you?
You can help me by making sure that the LGBTQ people in your life are supported and taken care of right now. So especially young people, check in with them, offer Trevor Project as a resource. We're available 24/7.
And last but not least, Eliel.
My socials are at Eliel Cruz across social media, and AVPs are at Anti-Violence. And how you can help AVP right now, we're in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign on Facebook. So if you are still making an income and have $5, $10, $25 to give, you can go to our Facebook page. There are plenty of those fundraisers that you can donate to.
Well, I want to share our deep gratitude for our panelists today for sharing your insights as we navigate this age of COVID together. Really, really appreciate your time and your intel into this. And I also want to thank our audience for attending, including all of you on the live stream. Thank you so much. I hope that you and your loved one are staying safe. And if you can, are willing, able, please make a donation to NTEN, as they are also navigating. It's still supporting all of us, allowing us to have this moment to get together. And Chris and Brianna will drop the link in the chat. And with that, I want to wrap up today and thank you so much. And we'll be in touch over the next few weeks on our next gathering. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful Wednesday night.
Thank you all
for having us, Ann. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.